Mm-hmm.
Good morning and good afternoon to some other parts of the world, wherever you are right now. We continue to speak life and blessing over your life
Yes.
and over your families.
Mm-hmm.
And stay safe and healthy nowadays.
Yeah.
So for tonight, Coach Ariel, before we put Sir Brian Ruth, so may I have the honor first to introduce him? Okay, so Brian Ruth, with more than 30 years of experience studying and applying leadership in the United States Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Working for profit and non-profit organizations and raising three children, Brian Ruth decided it was time to share the lessons he's learned.
Mm-hmm.
His desire is to help others unlock their leadership potential so they can have a greater impact.
Mm-hmm.
Brian is an experienced consultant and speaker with the breadth and depth of experience needed to quickly understand leadership challenges and craft the right solutions for his clients.
Wow.
So you can also learn from him through employmenttodeployment.com.
Wow.
So, my dear Cooking Kingdom citizens and ambassadors, let us all welcome Brian Root from Indiana, USA.
Yes.
Ariel, thanks again for having me back. I know it's been a few months since we talked last time, and a lot has changed. We're in the middle of this global pandemic, lots of fear, lots of uncertainty, lots of ideas about what leaders should be doing. So I hope today to offer a little encouragement, maybe a few thoughts that are different than what most people are talking about in terms of leading in a crisis. So that's kind of where I want to start. I know most of your audience are probably kingdom thinkers like yourself, so I will talk about the greatest leader ever in Jesus, and we'll look a little about how Jesus functioned both in a crisis and not in a crisis as a leader, or how kind of his everyday leadership and his crisis leadership looked very similar. So let me just start there. Leaders that change the way they lead in a crisis, in my opinion, are not great leaders. In other words, you ought to be leading every day the same way you lead in a crisis. Leaders that change their leadership in a crisis probably aren't leading in a crisis. They're probably trying to manage their way through the crisis. You'll never manage your way out of challenges or problems. You really have to lead your way out, or as we like to say, really balance your way out of that. In other words, balance your leadership and your management. We talk a lot about leadership, so it's hard for me not to talk about almost everything we do, but we don't just talk about leadership for the sake of leading. We talk about leadership for the sake of balancing it with management. In other words, leadership and management are equally important, but different ideas. And if we can strike the balance, that doesn't mean 50-50, 50% leading, 50% managing. It means balance. Out of 100%, some of its percentage is leading and some percentage is managing. That percentage may change and should change whether you're in a crisis or out of a crisis. Our leadership and our management on a daily, weekly, monthly basis is not always the same. There are events and other things that cause us to maybe increase the percentage of leadership at times or increase the percent of management at times. If leadership percentage increases, then management must decrease. If management percentage increases, then leadership must decrease. In other words, we get 100% and let's try to balance the two. So that's what I want to talk about today. How do we balance the two? And if we're not doing it every day as leaders, we probably aren't going to be able to do it in a crisis. In other words, if we're going to try to do something new in a crisis, bad time. Bad time to try something new. We should just be applying what we do all the time when it comes to crisis leadership. So let me look at a few things. Now I'm going to paraphrase most of what I talk about in the Bible, as opposed to reading it to you, because I think it just looks a little awkward for me to be, reading something. So I'm going to paraphrase it, but I'll give you the references so your listeners can go back and read them for themselves. When Jesus first comes on the scene, he spends some time in the wilderness being tempted. When he comes out of that, in Matthew 4:23, it's recorded, again, paraphrased, it's recorded that he was going through Galilee and he was teaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing all kinds of sickness and disease. He was spreading the good news of the kingdom of God and healing all kinds of sickness and disease. He was striking a balance between leading and managing. Let me give you a quick high-level definitions. Leadership, we often say, is about direction. It's about, in a nautical way, pointing the ship in the right direction. Management is about making the ship run well. They're both important. Pointing, so we are going where we want to go, and making the ship get there efficiently are equally important ideas. Jesus was doing that. He was pointing us directionally to a better place, the kingdom of God, the good news of the kingdom of God. But he was also trying to get us there. In other words, he was also demonstrating what the kingdom looked like. Healing sickness and disease. There is no sickness and disease in the kingdom, the place we're trying to get to. So he was demonstrating that. He was managing that. People were sick and needed healing. That's a management function. Taking care of today is a management thing. Directionally, where are we going is the leadership function. He was doing both. Now you might say, well, those people that were sick were in a crisis, but Jesus himself wasn't in a crisis. He was doing this every single day. There are countless examples of Jesus in the Bible talking about the kingdom of God and then healing people, or demonstrating or managing, making the ship run towards the kingdom, towards where he was trying to get to. Now let's look at when we get to maybe a little bit more of a crisis situation. Let's see if he changes anything he does. Matthew 14. Again, I'm not going to read the whole book, but Matthew 14 starts out with Jesus in a bit of a personal crisis. The beginning of Matthew 14 is where John the Baptist is being killed. He's beheaded. His disciples come to Jesus and tell him what happened. Again, John the Baptist is the one that really paved the way for Jesus. He sold out for Jesus. He gave everything to make sure that the stage was set for Jesus' arrival. Yet, he's in prison and he's beheaded, and Jesus is unable to do anything because it's not part of the Father's plan. And so Jesus, when he hears about this, he goes off by himself. As almost always is the case, people find him, and when people find him, he has compassion, and he talks to them and heals them again. Good news of the kingdom, heals their sick. The disciples come to him and say, listen, boss, again, I'm paraphrasing, listen, boss, people are hungry, we're in the middle of nowhere, there is no food, you got to let people go. You have to let them go get some food, otherwise we're going to have a really bad situation. There's a lot of people here. Round numbers, 5,000 men plus women and children. A lot of people here. And Jesus looks at his disciples and says, you feed them. Well, what do the disciples do? The disciples go, start looking around. They're like, well, who has any money? Where are we going to go buy food? How are we going to do all that? They were in this crisis, and they were looking at the crisis. Well, let me take another step back again. Let me define something else for you. When we're improving our leadership, or one of the first things leaders do, or a skill set they need to develop, is the ability to what we term tell authentic stories, or become an authentic storyteller. We define authentic storytelling as painting a picture of the future that's better than your present reality, and it's told or articulated with originality or believability or authenticity, whatever the right word is for you. It's a future place that's better than present reality. Why is that definition important? It's important because we're not dismissing the significance of present reality. That's really important in a crisis, is not to minimize what's really going on. But we don't lose sight of the fact that there's a better place we're still heading to, and we will get there even though we may be in the midst of challenges or difficulties. The disciples in this example were not balancing their leadership and management. They were 100% managing. All they could see was the crisis. Jesus told us to feed the people. There's a lot of people here, and we have no food and very little money and no place to buy food. Middle of a crisis. What do? They had no idea. Jesus says, bring me what you have. He looks to heaven. He blesses what they have, and they feed the people. And when they're done feeding the people, they gather up 12 baskets of extra food, remaining food. Jesus knew the future, saw the picture of the future. That better future is the kingdom of God being here. There is no hunger in the kingdom. He knew the Father could provide that. He looked to the Father, asked the Father to bless what they were doing, and then he managed the people's hunger. He fed the people. He was balancing his leadership and management, whereas the disciples were focused only on managing in the midst of what they saw as a crisis. After this is all done, Jesus again goes off by himself. The disciples get in the boat. They head out across the lake. Jesus sees them out there and decides, oh, it's time for me to go catch up with them. And so he walks on the water to get to the boat where they are. The disciples see something coming. They panic. They think it's some kind of a ghost. Then they hear Jesus' voice. Peter says, well, if it's really you, then tell me to get out of the boat and I'll come walk to you. So he says, great, get out of the boat and walk to me. Peter gets out of the boat. He takes a few steps on the water. And then what does he do? He sees the wind. In other words, instead of recognizing that if he was going to balance himself in this situation, he would see the kingdom. I can do greater things than what I should earthly be able to do because I'm a kingdom believer and I'm serving the king. And he saw his present reality only. It's really windy. The waves are really big. I think I'm going to drown. And so he starts to sink in the water. We do that all the time, but we shouldn't as leaders, especially as kingdom thinkers that are also leaders. In other words, we should never lose sight of where we're trying to go, but don't diminish present reality. When we're in the middle of a crisis, a global pandemic like we have now, there's real fear. We shouldn't minimize that. There's real sickness. We shouldn't minimize that. There's real death. We shouldn't minimize that. But we shouldn't only see that. In other words, sometimes all we do is we drop our head down and we can't see past our problem. We can't see past the challenge. And we have to force our head back up again. We have to lift our eyes back up so we can see down the road. We can see that picture of the future that's better, that this pandemic will end, that the global economy will come back, that our lives will be restored again. That will happen. But present reality is present reality. We don't diminish that. We don't dismiss that. We recognize that the empathy we need as leaders ought to come out. But it should come out even when we're not in a crisis. In other words, what I'm trying to explain to you and what I believe is leading is leading. So to say, let's talk about leading in a crisis, to me, I say, well, let's just talk about leading. Because we should be doing this all the time. We should always be looking at a better tomorrow, but not dismissing our present reality, good or bad. Let's take another example. Let's take even maybe a bigger crisis. Let's get to the end of Jesus' life. Matthew 26, Luke 22, both record Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Quick review, Jesus is praying, the disciples are sleeping. He keeps going, are you guys going to stay awake and pray with me? And they say, sure, and then they fall asleep again. Eventually, the religious leaders come to the garden. Judas is with them. Judas is going to betray Jesus. He does. They go to then arrest or grab Jesus. And what does Peter do? Yanks the sword out and whoop, lops off the ear of one of the people that are going to grab him. What does Jesus do? Does he balance his leadership and management in this crisis? Now, this is probably the biggest crisis that Jesus had to balance himself in. He knows what's going to happen. He's going to be arrested. He's going to die. A very difficult death. He could have just focused on the present reality and forgot about a future state that's better than what was going on. But he doesn't. He chastises Peter, says, put your sword away. And he says, don't you think I could ask the Father and he would send legions of angels to come to protect me and to come to fight for me? Of course he could, right? Of course he could. Why? That's kingdom thinking. That's a destination. That's a future place that's better than where he is. But he doesn't forget where he is. He's standing there with a guy in front of him who doesn't have an ear and who's losing blood and who needs help. And so what does he do? He puts the ear back on and heals it. He manages the situation, but he doesn't lose sight of the leadership aspect. He's balancing his leadership and management even in this final crisis he's in. I can't articulate or express to your listeners how important it is to try to understand this concept of balancing leadership and management. If you can understand it, you no longer have to say, how do I lead in this situation? Or how do I lead in that situation? How do I lead in a crises? How do I lead when the economy's good? How do I lead when it's bad? How do I lead when I'm in personal struggles? How do I lead when I'm in, personal fortunes? How do I lead in these different situations? You don't have to ask that question ever again. You simply just say, I have to balance my leadership and management every day, all the time. If I can focus on that, crisis, no crisis, doesn't matter. I just keep leading. I keep moving toward a better place without diminishing present reality. Now, that's just one aspect of that. In other words, there's a lot more leadership we can talk about, and there's more management stuff we can talk about. I'll talk a little bit more about some leadership things here, and then I'll stop talking because I could probably talk about this for hours, but I certainly will spare you that pain today. So we said that one of the first aspects of leadership is this idea of painting a picture of the future that's better than your present reality, and you do it with originality, believability, your way, your words. In other words, you're not just a conduit or repeating what somebody else has said, but you actually believe what you're saying, right? This is coming from you in your words, in your way. Question is why? Why is painting this picture of the future without losing sight of present reality, why is that important? It's important because the first thing we have to do if we're going to gain followers, if we're going to have people that say, hey, I want to go with you, I want to go on this journey alongside of you, let me walk side by side with you, we need to get them to trust us. No trust, no journey together. There's no other way to do it. There's no other way around it. So we need to get trust. We need to gain trust. We need to gain trust when things are good. We need to gain trust when we're in a crisis. It doesn't matter. Trust is important, good or bad. Great economy, bad economy. Healthy, sick. Doesn't matter. Trust is trust, and it needs to be obtained if you're going to get followers to walk with you. So why does authentic storytelling gain trust? When we think of the word trust and we study the word, we come up with images of a place of refuge or a safe place, or a place of protection. We're not necessarily talking always physical protection. We want the people around us to be physically safe in this global pandemic. Certainly physical safety is important. But in terms of just leadership and gaining trust or having followers say, I want to come with you, I want to help you get to where you're trying to go, this place of refuge is really for their participation. People won't trust us if they don't feel like their experiences or their ideas are valued, are important, will be considered. There's no reason for me to give you ideas or to give you my experience if, in fact, I don't think you want it as a leader. We've probably all been around leaders that really thought their ideas were the only ideas that mattered, their ideas were the best. They didn't really want other ideas. There was no reason to get other ideas. Just do what I want. That's not what we want if we want to improve our leadership. If we want to improve our leadership, we want to bring people alongside, and we want them to be full participants in the story. Again, we're telling authentic stories. In the place we're trying to go, we want them to be fully vested, full participants in where we're heading. That's what we want. How do we do that? We want to make sure that we let them see where we're going. The picture I oftentimes use is if you were a passenger in a car and somebody else was driving and you have your eyes closed, you don't really know what's going to happen. You can't really see where you're going. You're hoping the driver does what the driver's supposed to do. But when you open your eyes and now you can see, well, now the game is kind of a game changer. When we're not telling authentic stories as leaders, when we're just trying to get people to implement what we want, our ideas, they're in essence walking behind us. They can't see around us. They're just hoping when we go left, that's the right way to go. And when we go right, that's the right way to go. But when we tell authentic stories, it's like we step to the side, and we throw open the door, and now the followers can see what we see. They can see where we're going. They say, hey, that is a better place. This global pandemic is going to end. Life will return to the way it was, or maybe even better than it was, because we might have learned something out of this pandemic that we can apply in future. We're going to regain much of what we had back, and maybe even more than we had back. But you got to help me get there. You got to join me in the journey. I can't get there by myself. I throw open the door, I let you see where we're going, and I say, will you participate with me? Will you walk side by side with me toward this better future, this picture of a better place than what our present reality is giving us? Or are you going to just be mired or locked into present reality and be crippled by that and unable to go with me? In other words, are you going to let fear consume you, or are you going to let faith and hope guide you? As kingdom citizens, that's not really a choice, because fear and faith don't live in the same house. So we have to not let our present reality cripple us in a crisis, but always be looking toward that better tomorrow, that better future, telling this authentic story so that we can get people to trust us. Why? So they'll walk with us, arm in arm, side by side. We can get to the destination much quicker if we do that. And you see that globally in a lot of places. Certainly I live in the United States, and I see that. I see a real coming together of people, regardless of political party in general, and we're trying to go to a better place. We're not dismissing present reality. I mean, we've in essence closed our economy down for the most part to do that, which is very difficult for folks in the United States to do. But we're doing it because we see a better tomorrow, and that we can get there much quicker if we all do it together, as opposed to kind of fighting with each other or just being crippled by present reality. But we're not dismissing present reality. There are real sickness and real deaths going on through this pandemic. But that's leading and managing in a balanced way, regardless of your environment. Crisis, no crisis. That's what I think I'm trying to impress on your listeners today, is too often, and there's been too many people, leadership gurus in their own right, who want to have virtual town halls or seminars, or they're doing podcasts where the title in general is leading in a crisis. And when you listen to them, what are they really saying in a lot of cases? A lot of what they're saying about leading in a crisis is really managing. They're talking some leadership things, but in general, they're talking about short-term planning, and that's all management stuff. It's super important. You should be doing that. Today, in the middle of a crisis, yes. A month from now, when the crisis is over, 2 months from now, yes, you should still be doing that. That's management. You should always be doing it. You should also always be leading. So I just think the message of, hey, let's talk about leading in a crisis is the wrong message. I think a better message is, let's lead and let's manage in a balanced way. To do that, we must understand both. We have to understand leadership, and we have to understand management. If we don't understand both, it's impossible for us to do them effectively or to balance them. We oftentimes spend most of our time talking about leadership simply because I think there's a lot of management information out there. I think there's more understanding of what management is, I think, than there is leadership. But we don't talk about leadership more than management because it's more important. We just do it because we don't think as many people talk about it. And that's an area that we can help people improve better than we can on the management side. But they're equally important ideas. Listen, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's great always talking to our friends in the Philippines. We loved our time over there last year in 2019. Um, we hope that you found a nugget or two in this that was useful. We always appreciate the opportunity. We don't ever expect opportunities to speak to groups of people. So to speak to your audience, Ariel, is a tremendous opportunity for us, and which we're always very grateful for. Thanks again. God bless all of you. Stay safe. Balance your leadership and management, and together we'll get on the other side of this pandemic faster than we all think. Thanks again.